Navy wins an absolute classic of a game between Navy and Army. In my opinion, this was one of the best, if not the best, football game this entire season. This was everything that I thought this game was going to be. I talked a lot about prior to this game of how I thought it was going to be a very close, competitive game, of how both of these teams know each other very, very well. And that's exactly how this game played out. Now, do I think that Navy had the perfect game? No, absolutely not. I don't think Blake Horvath was that spectacular in this game for a whole lot of it. When he needed to be that spectacular, he was, though. This was just a game where it really truly seemed like Army was going to come away with a win. And that's truly because of how Army played in the first half. I thought Army played very well in the first half. I think you have to absolutely give Army a ton of credit. Went up 13-7 at halftime, and Dawson Jones was a huge part of that. He was 3 for 3 in this game from field goal, one of those being a 48-yard field goal in the third quarter to get it to a 16-7 game. But I want to talk about that possession because I think that was the deciding factor of this game. It truly was the turn of events that Navy needed in this one. And there's a real reason why, because Navy prior to that wasn't looking good offensively. And I think this was a team that looked a little bit better defensively at the start of the second half. They were great in the second half overall. I thought Navy truly caused Army a ton of issues in that second half. In the first half, the Navy defense wasn't good. I think you can truly ask any Navy fan or anyone watching that. It wasn't great. Now, they did force a ton of field goals, which is obviously going to be key in this game. They only gave up one touchdown in this game as well, which I believe that Navy hasn't given up more than one touchdown in a game to Army in like the last 8 games. So Army's truly had real difficulty of scoring points. I talked about they don't score more than 21 points. They scored 16 points in this game, but when things weren't going well, especially early on in the third quarter, Blake Horvath threw an interception that at the time it looked like it was going to be a pick six, and it looked like Army had all the momentum. Now, do I think if it ended up being a pick six that Navy doesn't have a chance of coming back? No, I think Navy would absolutely have a chance coming back, but it turns out that pick six did not become a pick six because the safety for Army, Justin Weaver, had a great play, but sadly his knee was on the ground for Army. Navy did a really good job defensively and forced a long field goal. Again, like I mentioned before, Army's kicker, Dawson Jones, hit a huge 48-yard field goal to go up 16-7. And in this type of game, when Navy is struggling offensively, and especially just the overall matchup between both of these teams, going up by 9 points, especially early on in the third quarter, is huge. Like, usually if you go up that, you usually feel pretty decently about your chances of winning. And to Navy's credit, they did not give up. And early on in this game, a lot of the bounces were not going Navy's way. Towards the end of the game, it's truly about heart, it's about effort, it's about getting the right bounces, and it doesn't necessarily matter about luck at the end of the day, because that's when this thing completely changed. Navy was not only doing better offensively, being able to get a little bit more of Eli Heidenreich, getting a little bit more of Alex Teska, Blake Horvath getting a little bit more involved. They were able to get the bounces that they needed. And it truly started out with making not only a one-possession game with about 2:59 left to go, but if you look at just the offensive production that Army had in the first half compared to the second half, drastically different. And if you look at the offensive production for Navy, drastically different as well. Do I think Navy was as executing as they have been all season? No, but again, I've given Army a ton of credit early on in this game. They played very well defensively. They were very tough, very physical. But the game of momentum truly changes. And this is a game of momentum. This is a game of, like I said, effort, a game of passion. And that's exactly what truly happened. When Navy got that, they ran with it. And it truly seemed like they were going to go all in. And that's exactly what they did. And there was a real opportunity here that Army could have very much won this game as well, because there was a second and goal basically at the 1-yard line. It looked like Navy was going to score, got a fumble. It didn't look like Blake Horvath even had control of the ball whatsoever. Army guy looks like he was going to pick up and try running back. Now, does he score a touchdown? Possibly, but there's some effort plays by Navy on that one to not only get the ball out of his hands, but recover it at the 8-yard line. That's one bounce. There's another bounce that truly changed this game as well. 3rd and 8 happened after that, and obviously it ended up being an incomplete pass. But the play Blake Horvath made to get the ball out of his hands right before his knee hit the ground was absolutely massive. Then it comes 4th and 8, and there's about 6 minutes and 37 seconds left to go in this game. You had a decision to make, and I do think you give Coach Newsbury a ton of credit for this one, because I think he realized that, hey, if this doesn't go well, like if we kick this field goal, there's a real possibility we never get the ball back, or there's a real possibility we will never have kind of the ball in this area of the field. And he decided to go for it on 4th and 8, which is something that isn't unusual for Navy to do, but like it's something that you truly had to trust your players. And I do obviously give a ton of credit for Navy for doing that. Obviously, it worked out. It was a game-winning touchdown. Before I get into that play, before I get into Eli Heidenreich, before I get into Blake Horvath, I do want to say, like, I am shocked. I don't understand what Army was doing here. Leaving Eli Heidenreich on an island with your guy, one-on-one with 4th and 8 in the red zone, total mismanaged by that defensive coordinator. Like, I think everyone knew that that ball was going to Eli Heidenreich, and to his credit, ran a great route. Horvath had a great throw. Pretty good coverage by the Army guy. But you cannot leave Eli Heidenreich in that spot one-on-one with your guy, because he's going to win a lot of those matchups. Like 99 probably out of 100 times he's going to win those matchups. And that's a real reason why I think he's going to be one of the guys on this team that Navy has that's going to give him a shot in the NFL. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to play wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's going to be a guy that can also maybe run the ball a little bit in the NFL. I think he's that good. I think you also have to talk about Landon Robinson. Landon Robinson was an absolute baller in this game. He also earlier today, another first-team All-American. He's going to get a chance. There's going to be multiple guys, I think, that deserve chances in the NFL for this Navy team. And like I mentioned, Blake Horvath made a great throw. Eli Heidenreich made a great catch. Eli Heidenreich was huge in this game. I think if you have to say an MVP of this game, I think it has to be Eli Heidenreich. He absolutely stepped up when this Navy team needed him. And I think because of that, because of the throw, this is going to be a game, and this is going to be a memory for these guys for a really long time. I talked about prior to this game. This was a senior class that was 1-2 going into this game. You needed to get the win. And the way they got this win just shows you what Navy is compared to Army at this point. And I know that a couple of years ago, Army's head coach Jeff Monken basically made a comment about, like, they even have a football program over at the Naval Academy. Well, I think the Navy took that to heart, and they absolutely deserve this game. And this was a game that came down to a 4th one, obviously, at the 2-minute timeout. They had Landon Robinson in at fullback, which I absolutely love, and they ended up getting the first down. And after the first down, there's a photo and there's videos of Blake Horvath waving goodbye to Army. And there was some conversation about, like, the disrespect for that. And basically Blake Horvath said specifically that, like, hey, they were talking crap to us the whole game. And there's not that disrespect, but I needed to do that. Like, they were talking crap, and now they're silent. I just gave it back to them for the most part. And not only that, but he gave a quote where he talked about brotherhood and how the Navy and the Naval Academy, these guys are a true brotherhood, and how he doesn't love the fact of, like, the idea of brotherhood being talked about at other schools when 20, 30 guys transfer out. This is a game that means that much to Navy. This is a game that means that much to Army, and obviously, because Navy won, they got to sing second, which is obviously the most important part of this whole thing. Navy's going to be able to keep the Commander-in-Chief trophy as well. This was an absolutely huge win for Navy. This was an absolutely electric, just overall atmosphere. This was what Army and Navy is supposed to be like. It's supposed to be really competitive. It's supposed to be really tight. It's supposed to be really emotional. It's supposed to be coming down to a really big play at the end of it. And Navy just did enough and got the right bounces, but also gave the effort that you need to in this game to win it. And I think Army made one too many mistakes or one too poor decisions that truly led to Navy winning this game. Navy absolutely deserved to win this game, especially for that second half. That second half adjustments offensively and defensively was far superior than what Army did in this one. Navy deserved this win. They absolutely got it. Had a huge couple of key plays, also a couple of huge effort plays that led them to this win, which I am super happy that they won. This was a game that I predicted. This was the result I predicted. I was cheering for Navy, obviously, and I'm really, really happy for not only those players, but for the midshipmen to celebrate an electric win, in my opinion, one of the best college football games of this entire season. But yeah, that's really it for this episode. Won't talk about Army Navy for a little bit while, but if you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. Really enjoyed this game, really enjoyed this matchup, really enjoyed these players. Well-deserved win for Navy and well-deserved end to the college football regular season. Last thing I want to say before I wrap up, Army Navy needs to be kept the last game of the season. Do not put any other football games in there, and anyone else that's talking opposed to that, I think is completely wrong. This is a game that needs to be a standalone game. This is a game that needs to continue to stay where it is, and putting it week 0, putting it week 1 would be an absolute mistake. I think people like Joel Klatt and some of the stuff he's been saying about how, like, we don't want underdogs in college football. We want the best teams. Well, guess what? We like underdogs. We like Army and Navy at the last weekend. It needs to stay there, and it needs to stay in the cold. So keep Army Navy, standalone game. It needs to happen. Anyone saying otherwise, I think, is completely wrong. But hopefully you enjoyed this recap. I obviously did enjoy the result of the game as well. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, and make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment as well, and tune in to other recaps for teams around the U.S.